Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the THE Student. Today we have a very exciting institution with us, all the way from Indianapolis. So we have the Kelley School of Business that are going to be talking to us about their exciting AI courses at their business schools. So I will pass over to Alex Barsi Lopes to make an introduction.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Alex Barsi Lopes, and I am the Associate Chair of the Kelley Executive Education Programs. And we essentially offer a lot of our online MS programs. We have an online in the MS in Information Technology Management, Business Analytics, and Finance. And what we have today in our kind of a conversation today in our presentation is essentially a little bit of a snapshot of the things that we do in our online MS in IT management, and a little bit of what we do in the business analytics program as well. And with me, we have also Arlene Llewellyn, and sorry, I must mispronounce her name. Sorry. And she works with us in terms of managing the programs as well. And I'm going to go a little bit to the next slide so that while Arlene introduces herself, you can take a quick look at our QR code if you are more interested in the MS IT management. Arlene, please go ahead.
Hi, as Alex said, my name is Arlen Llewellyn. I'm the Assistant Director of Recruitment here at the IU Kelley School of Business, and very happy to see you all here today, and happy to answer any questions that you have as Alex is presenting on the content. If you have questions about our programs as you're browsing our website, please just drop those in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you for joining us here today.
Okay, cool. So any questions, you can put that in the Q&A, and we'll address that. Questions about the programs, you can, Arlene is going to take care of those. Questions about the content, I can take care of that, okay? So let's talk about what's the main questions here today. And so really the title is what in the AI world is going on, right? And there's so many things happening at this point. And we wanted to really, in this presentation, address 5 questions, right? Where did all this AI stuff came from, right? Where is that coming from? And what took us here? Where are we now, right? In this current moment, in terms of investments in apply in generative AI, what's the current status of the world? What are the main risks that are still related to implementation of AI, initiatives and projects? Then we go over the ideas and discussion about why do most projects fail, right? So right now, most AI projects will not see production. Many of them will never achieve the expected results. So we want to understand a little bit what's going on behind the scenes and how to minimize those risks. And finally, the opposite of that, right? How to succeed. What are the things that really have to take in consideration if you want to be successful in pursuing like an AI initiative, right, or managing an AI solution, an AI project. So, and again, first of all, where did all this AI stuff come from? And essentially, what we have seen AI is really this confluence of those 3 main technology development areas, right? So one is big data, and it's important because we have more and more data available, right? More IoT sensors, more things that are just available to us to use and to evaluate and to assess in terms of data, right? And of course, we have the right repositories for data, right? Many cloud services that can store an uncountable amount of data for us, and this data is used to train models, right? The second main trend that is kind of propelling AI forward, right, is this idea of more computing power, right? So we have had in the last years exponential growth in computing power. So if you think about one of the most valuable companies in the world right now is NVIDIA, right? For those people a little bit older, they might remember NVIDIA essentially as manufacturing like GPUs for playing video games in your computer. And since they discovered that GPUs are really good to train data sets, used to process data sets for training of AI models, right? And NVIDIA essentially catapulted itself to be one of the most valuable companies in the world. So a lot of computing power, and that's something that we felt, back in the day that maybe it's going to slow down, but keeps going, right? And the computing power becomes more and more available, right, through cloud services, and new chips and new designs are becoming more popular. And then you have algorithms. So if you think about algorithms, right, some traditional machine learning algorithms actually in some way, shape, and form have been available for decades, right? The problem is that in many cases, we cannot really do anything with that because we do not have enough data and you do not have enough computing power. So these algorithms keep evolving and keep changing and keep, getting better and better. And, and again, with the help of more computing power and the availability of more data, now we have the possibilities of really doing a lot of great stuff with those algorithms. Now, if you're speaking of algorithms, right, and that's the thing that we want to really start our idea about what is kind of applied AI versus the more like generative AI, right? So traditionally, we have had a lot of machine learning, right, or statistical machine learning. So we're talking about supervised learning, talking about unsupervised learning, right, and reinforcement learning. And essentially, those are models where there's a lot of a human management, right, in terms of how AI is going to be used. Even if you have unsupervised learning, essentially that means that you still have a lot of control. It's just that you might not have some of the basic hypotheses or ideas of the final state early on. So things like clustering, right? Things like ranking, things like understand like recommendation engines that you see like with Netflix, for example. That's something that you see a lot of the use of those unsupervised learning. Reinforcement learning, we can use in production lines, right, to essentially balance lines and having incentives to keep those lines balanced as the reinforcement mechanism for those types of algorithms, right? And on the other hand, right, we start to see deep learning. And deep learning is something that really came to mind, not that long ago, right? And one of the biggest early examples were convolutional neural networks, or CNNs. And those are the networks, the deep learning tools that allows you to recognize images and videos, right? So we start to see a lot of those examples like recurrent neural networks about time series, generative adversarial networks to create images, diffusion models, and those are all brilliant and they all work still, right? There's many applications of that. But eventually we got to the big models that are being used right now, which are transformers. So transformers, they're super recent, right? I mean, some of the publications that really are the baseline of transformers only took place less than a decade ago. So there is still a lot of development in this area. They're relatively new, right? And the idea here is trying to create a vector of words, try to create a vector of correlations in a multi-dimensional space and see how one thing can lead to the other, right? How small is associated with smallest, right? Or small is the opposite of big, for example, right? And you have, those models are growing because you have more and more parameters, right? More training data, and the more parameters, more training data, better outcomes, the more precise the outcomes are, right? So transformers are really the base of large language models. But it's not only that. So if you think about ChatGPT, if you think about Claude, if you think about Copilot in many cases, right? That's the baseline, the base in neural network models are transformers that support those large language models that essentially are commercialized through OpenAI and ChatGPT or Claude and Anthropic, right? Copilot and Microsoft and so on and so forth. But what we have seen right now is these models are starting to be used in a variety of fields that were perhaps more confined to early right neural network models, right? The CNNs and RNNs of the world, and now transformers are kind of taking over that, right? If you think about language recognition, RNNs, right, were the models that were actually used a lot to do that, but transformers now vastly outperform RNNs in that domain. So there's a lot of interesting things happening in this world, and a lot of it is still under development. So we don't quite know where we're going to head. Now, the important thing, right? So this is the baseline. This is where it came from, right? The evolution of big data, the evolution of computing power, the evolution of algorithms. So now where we stand, right? And what we have seen, this is an interesting paper, recent paper by McKinsey and their tech trends. And what we have seen is that we see generative AI very growing quite a lot. One of the metrics they use in this paper is job postings, right? So the more people that can work with generative AI, the job postings are increasing. So the other area that you see is kind of a little bit more nascent is this idea of industrialized machine learning, right? So there's not a lot of investment, but there's a lot of interesting applications in that domain because you can manufacturing, of course, and service operations are very, very affected, right? If you have machine learning that's applied to their processes. So a little bit of a decline in job postings relatively early in terms of investment, but something that's perhaps growing a lot quicker because that's what people see in a lot of the potential applications. And then you have applied AI, right? AI that has been used in dynamically different fields, different industries, right? That's the traditional machine learning or traditional deep learning, right? Not generative AI that we have used to recognize, pictures, right? To use time series. And this is something that is still has been growing quite a lot, right, until up to 2023. Things might be changing a little bit now with more emphasis on generative AI, but it's still very powerful, right? A lot of investment, although it starts to decline in terms of job postings in this area, right? So a lot of things happening, a lot of things moving on the right direction in terms of still a lot of growth, right? So there's a lot of significant potential in that. Now, what is interesting that is happening right now in this area, because again, they want to see the status of AI, both applied AI and generative AI, is that you might be running out of human-generated data, right? So, and because those models, of course, they scan the networks, right? They scan the web, they scan repositories of data to try to get as much data as possible to train those models, right? So we are creating more parameters, we are creating more correlations, but what we have seen is that there's some kind of forecasts that publicly available data, right, is starting to get to the limit in terms of how it can be used to train those models. So what we have also seen is that one potential alternative for that is to use synthetic data. In other words, generative AI creating data, right, synthetic data that's now then used to train generative models, right? So a model that creates data that's used to train this model, and there's some early indications that this might be a little bit risky, not really lead to the results that were expected. Now, if you think about this and say, well, we're going to get done with that, right? And there's nothing else we can do. Well, that's not really true, right? It's still data to be consumed and to be used to be training models. But the other component is that we start to see a little bit more of different approaches to dealing with data, right? So we start to see more of things like RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation, and essentially using more of a private data sets, right? Or more smaller data sets that are organizational in nature, that is kind of working in collaboration with the large language models to really increase the outcomes, increase the benefits for organizations, right? So you see, for example, I was attending a talk at the University of Pittsburgh using medical diagnosis, right? So they use a lot of those RAG models to augment the LLMs, right, the large language models, in a way to better provide assessments right? But using their own data to really narrow down the potential causes, the potential symptoms, right? In addition of what is captured in the large language models. So it's something that we are using now to really bypass this limitation of of available data publicly, and really try to customize and improve the results that we can have in our own organizations. And the point is, it's very hard to assess how good those LLMs are at this point and how far they can go. So in one sense, right, we have this potential limitation of data, right, availability. In the other sense, we have started to see some reports that the new generations of models is becoming tougher and tougher to get those models that are significantly better from the previous versions, right? So we're releasing, ChatGPT, version X, right? It might not be significantly, different and much, much better than X-1 version. So that's a lot of discussion in the field right now. But on the other hand, what we have seen is that we are seeing these models, right? Even if we're fine-tuning some things that are perhaps not absolutely revolutionary, but essentially workarounds, right, and variations of other models that are exceptionally good in some tasks, right? So you might be aware that back in the day, there were some discussions about how these new models can pass the exam that tests people to be lawyers, right? Or they can pass some math quizzes, right? Now we have seen models that are really passing exams that are highly advanced, like PhD qualifications, for example, and highly elaborated exams. So, and to the point that we're having difficulty measuring, right, how good those models are. So, so in one sense, there might be some limitations that we might reach, over time. On the other hand, we have these models that keep evolving and keeping getting better, right? Again, they're not flawless. There is still a lot of issues that you see happening. It is just that they are that we should learning about the limits that these models can have. And one of the biggest things that you have right now is this idea about agentic AI, right? Double O AI agent at your service. So this is really a big push in recent, actually not recent years, but recent months, really looking at how exactly can we get some automation, right? Some AI technology, some citizen development, right? Organizational needs to really support your tasks. So things like, for example, creating proposals, right, for clients based on previous data. So you don't have to do the proposal yourself, right? We can have agents that are going to be scanning the previous proposals. Maybe you have something in SAP, right, with Joule, or you can have something with Microsoft in Copilot agents, right, or SharePoint. And essentially, those agents are working behind the scenes, coordinating information to come up with some support for the tasks that you are doing already, right? So we can have like LinkedIn, agents that are scanning the network to find some of the information about your counterpart in another organization that you're going to be interacting with. You can have internal agents scanning your previous purchase orders to see if you can have some discounts, right? And you can have Copilot, SharePoint looking at previous proposals and update those proposals for additional data. So that is something that it has become much more available to citizen developers, right? So some cases you don't need to have a very extensive background, right, in technology to start using those agents. So it's very exciting. It's very fresh. It's something that has started to receive a lot of emphasis in the last months. and really bridging, right, the needs of the organization, AI technology, and the ability for regular users without a lot of training, right, or without a lot of technology background to come up with these, specific uses of the technology. And then, of course, if you're looking at the regular, the status, the state of AI right now, right, we cannot ignore, new competitors in that space like DeepSeek or Quinn. So DeepSeek is more of an open, it's more open source, it's more a startup. Quinn is related to Alibaba, right? And the idea is we now have those competitors that are open source models, so we can move them around to things like the Hugging Face, right? And really become, they can test those models, they can deploy those models in a variety of different scenarios, right? And the idea is that they are comparable. They might not necessarily be better in everything, right? And in fact, they might be not as good as many of the most advanced, open AI models. In some cases, they are essentially equivalent, right? But the point is that they have a much lower cost. So that can really democratize AI access to a variety of organizations worldwide, right? Because they have lower cost to train and lower cost to operate. So in that scenario, if you have an organization that is relying on those services, they might not need to spend as much money, right, to contract the big players in that area. They can start looking at these smaller solutions that are going to get results that are very close, at least, to the results you get by relying on some of the big players in the AI world. A lot of potential in this area, a lot of things that are happening right now that are very, very exciting, and hopefully, leading you to have more options, right? So we're not constrained to just a handful of partners. You can find, your providers of AI services everywhere, right? And for a lower cost. So a lot of excitement, a lot of new technologies, a lot of new approaches. So we are far, far from done in this area. There's a lot of things happening down the pipeline. Now, of course, it's a lot of excitement, right? But there are risks. And that's the thing that you want to be very aware when you're dealing with AI, is really looking at the risks that are involved. So one of the risks that we have is really this idea about unsettled ethics and unsettled regulations, right? And now, this is not a trivial question. If you ask people, right, what is ethical and fair in the world of AI, right, in the processes and the outcomes, if you ask 100 people, you might have 100 different answers. And I know this because I tend to ask my students about that, right? What is fair? What is a concept of fairness, right? So this is a philosophical issue that has been going around since, I don't know, the beginning of humankind, right? What is fair? How do you define fair outcomes, or is it better to have fair processes? So because of that, right, it's still very elusive. And because of that, regulations are still evolving, right? So you have a complex problem about fairness of outcomes, fairness of processes, right? And then you tackle technology, very, very modern technology on top of that. That means that regulations are still evolving very dramatically whenever they are evolving, right? So there's some places which couldn't care less about regulations. There's some places that care. So probably the most current example, the most advanced AI regulatory framework can be found at the EU, the European Union, right? But even then, right, is a very interesting approach. It talks about different classification of systems, and the classification of systems that is related to specific levels of risk, right? But one of the interesting aspects of that is because technology is evolving so quickly, right? And even that regulatory framework was delayed when generative AI became more popular, because you're just not prepared for that change in the levels of risk. So We're still trying to evolve on that. The AI regulatory framework is actually quite interesting, but not only is there's the potential of being obsolete, right, as technology changes, there's also the issue about, is it enforceable or not, right? Who is going to actually regulate and impose, right, the analysis necessary to regulate the companies in an industry that is evolving very quickly? So there's a lot of risk on that, because you never really know, right, where are you going to be if you follow these approaches that potentially subject to fines, right, to punishment in a particular country or not, because again, those regulations are evolving very, very quickly. The other big issue is the presence of biases, right? So this is something that sometimes don't realize, and in many cases say, well, this is an AI, this is a cold, rational system, right? We did some studies at Kelley, if people would prefer to be evaluating their job performance by humans or by AI, right? Kind of a very open question. And many people said, well, AI, because I think it's going to be fair, right? It's going to be more fair than if I had a person with their own biases. And many people don't recognize that it's still significant biases when you're talking about AI, right? And there are biases in every step of the way, right? There are biases in the data sets that are used. There are biases in the modules that are selected. There are biases in how the outcomes are used, right? So we have seen this again and again affecting, for example, gender disparities in when people are asking for loans, because depending on your gender, you might receive a higher value or might be denied a loan based on gender only, right? And it's not trivial to get rid of those biases, which means that we have to be extremely vigilant, right? That you understand that these biases can take place, right? And keep constantly testing for the presence of those biases and constantly looking for alternatives that can minimize the presence of biases, right? For the longest time, things like facial recognition were very limited in the application because they will not as work as well for people with darker skin versus people with a lighter skin, right? Because the original data sets were composed by, essentially light-skinned males working in California back in 1980s, right? So that's the kind of thing that we still are permeating the use of AI, so have to be super careful with that. The other issue is, this idea about it should always work, right? So why is not working? So humans, as they tend to get used to things working, right? And all of a sudden they forget, right, the risks, right? They forget to really think about, hey, there will be occasions where this system is not working, right? One of the famous cases is autonomous cars, when, for the most part, they work beautifully until they don't. And because people are used to the world where they're working beautifully, right, they're not expecting when they fail, right? And that oversight is going to evaporate after some time, right? So we have to really think about that, how to create controls that prevent humans to just get used to AI working all the time and just being too relaxed, right, and not having any control when the systems fail. And you also have to figure out liability, right? Who is responsible for that, right? If there's a failure, who is responsibility? Is it the person was not doing the proper oversight? Is it the system? And we're still evolving in terms of their views about those problems about oversight. The other weird thing about models is we don't quite know how they work. So explainability has always been a big problem, right? And it's probably going to remain a big problem. And we don't quite know how to prevent hallucinations when these systems end up making things up, right? So one thing is very different from regular computer systems and things like deep learning, right, neural networks, is that we don't actually know the internal mechanics, right, in which deep learning system actually works. We train them, right, to have some sense about how they are operating, and to keep doing research on that. Anthropic just released interesting papers about that, about how, their systems, they believe their systems work, but even them is a guess, right? So it's very hard for us to prevent mistakes from happening, right? And it's very hard for us to really debug when they happen, because those systems don't behave at all like traditional computing systems when you can debug, right? You can go line by line and figure out. Is not like that in the world of deep learning, right? We just don't understand precisely the mechanism they use to lead to the outputs, which is, of course, is another source of risk. Now, the one thing that you want to also think about, right, is why do most projects, AI projects, fail? So first of all, you have to understand there's a lot of hype, right? Hype is everywhere, right? So it's easy to see things like, this is some collection of headlines from McKinsey publications, McKinsey, the consulting giant, right? The state of AI in 2023, generative AI's breakout year, right? The state of AI in early 2024, right? Adoption spikes and starts to generate value. And then you go to 2025, right? Generative AI is here, but where are its users, right? So there's a lot of hype, right? There's a lot of things, and I think people started to realize now that those things are not exactly, how as trivial as they thought it would be, because it looks fine, right? Everybody has access to ChatGPT or an equivalent, and all of a sudden realize, well, that's not exactly how that works in an organization setting. So Infosys published a paper recently and looking at some of the what they call the enterprise AI readiness framework, right? And they look at 5 different factors: strategy, governance, talent, data, and technology. And what they came up is that only 2% of companies is scoring well in all of those 5 dimensions, right? Um, Only 19% of AI projects provide the value, most of the value that they were expected to provide. In estimates about between 80 and 90% of AI projects never leave the proof of concept stage. They never move into production. So by all accounts, the vast majority of AI projects or AI solutions, AI implementations actually fail to achieve the value that was expected. Why that happens? Well, some of them start already within a losing proposition, right? And essentially, essentially companies that don't have the strategy set up, right? The business don't understand what technology can do, so they expected too much out of that, right? There's not a comprehensive AI strategy that has specific plans about how to use AI, right now, and what's the future state in our organization about the use of AI. And in many cases, don't have measurable business cases with the appropriate metrics. So like, well, let's do it, right? But well, how do we evaluate if this is being successful or not? And how do we learn from the success or failure from this project, right? Many organizations are pursuing going, straight ahead without, with business cases, without really understanding, right, what's the proper value proposition, what are the metrics that can be used to measure, right, these outcomes. The other thing is that we don't have, in many cases, governance structures, right? And because they're missing, we're going to increase the risks. There is really a lack of understanding, right, in many organizations, across the organization, about AI-related risks and how, right, to deploy a governance structure that would really manage those risks better. Because the risks are everywhere, right? There might be individual risks, right? There might be organizational risks, there might be even societal risks that are involved with the use of AI if there is not proper governance and proper assessment of the potential risks involved. Now, one interesting trend is that we're starting to see more talent emerge, right? It's actually the factor that most organizations score well in the Infosys report, right? But we still don't quite know what AI skills are, right? So we say, hey, you need to have more people trained in AI skills. What are those, right? Are we really thinking about technical skills, about really going deeper into the models, understanding of the models and how to use and manipulate them, right? And how to deploy them in a variety of these scenarios? or talking about skills in using AI better, right? That you can support your current work with the use of AI, or are you talking about both? What we know is that we have a significant generational gap in place where younger people are getting using that, sometimes not well, right? But in a higher pace than sometimes older people in organizations, right? And of course, every single industry might have its own variations about the use of AI. Data is one of the Achilles heel of many AI projects, right? I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I have worked, worked with companies and discussed with companies when they say, well, we're all in about AI, and then they discover they don't have data, right, to support the use of AI, to support their models. Data is the lifeblood of AI systems. There is no good data, we cannot have positive outcomes, because what we're going essentially is garbage in, garbage out. And unfortunately, most organizations don't have good data strategies, data management, and data governance to support AI, right? So the problem with that is that projects end up taking more time, right? Because there's no data, right? And essentially not leading to the desired benefits, because again, you put garbage in, you get garbage as the outcome. Now, interesting enough, technology might actually be the easiest part to solve when you are investing in AI or AI initiatives, right? And part is because the technology is still evolving very quickly, but now we start to see a little bit more of a tech stack that is available for applied AI and more of an emerging tech stack for generative AI, right? Many of those solutions can be found in the marketplace, right? You need to understand what's being offered. You need to understand the capabilities of the different models, different technologies, right? But they are available. So it is a solvable problem in the sense of, the data is there, the application is there, right? And their marketplace exists where you can get the solutions. So in many cases, you really need to have more orchestration skills to pick and choose models that can be combined together to achieve your organizational outcomes versus developing skills to actually start from scratch. So that is one area that I think there's a lot of progress coming, right? In Infosys, it shows like a lower percentage, but this is something that the marketplace is providing more and better solutions over time. Now, we know the risks. We know that many projects fail. How to succeed, right? So this is the more, prescriptive part of our presentation today, right? Is really looking at how organizations are really rewiring to capture value. So following about, my McKinsey, headlines, right? So this is on the latest headlines in one of the most current surveys, and looking at, all right, so if you really want to do this, right, you need to change way more than you thought you needed to change. You really need to go deeper, right, in organizational changes to truly benefit from AI. And those are some things that you need to do. So this is my assessment based on many hours spent with people working on this and reading articles, right, and reading business cases about what the things that work in improving your likelihood of being successful. So first of all, you have to change your strategy about how to use AI. At least you have to create perhaps a strategy about how to use AI, right? How exactly AI can truly change how your organization operates. Many organizations operate in this, oh, I need to invest in AI because everybody else is doing, right? This fear of missing out, this FOMO approach. You need to stop that. We need to kind of really look and say, how exactly this can change us, right? How we do business. Otherwise, you are going to be trying to always grasp for these straws and not really be very successful. You have to think about implementing a dual timeline approach, right? Really, essentially looking at both early wins, right? Quick applications, but also this long-term perspective, looking at how is this going to evolve in 10 years, right? It's always this quasi science fiction approach, right? Use your imagination to figure out, hey, this is what those models AI can actually do right now. How is this expected to evolve based on what we have seen so far? How can we prepare organization to really use AI not only right now, this is the early win part, but 10 years from now, right? How is work is going to change? How our capacity is going to change, right? And really think about developing the business case with appropriate metrics for AI projects. Instead of just jumping in everything, pilots, etc. Well, how exactly are we doing this, right? How are we going to measure success? Can you learn from that quickly so we can get better at that? We need to change our skill sets in organizing as well, right? So investigate, truly investigate, right? That's why your human resource or talent department really can be very helpful. Try to investigate what AI skills your employees need in your organization, and train them. And really train people in how to use that, right? Many of those tools are becoming more accessible for regular non-technical users, right? And really try to explain what AI can and cannot do. That's one of the biggest issues, because people all of a sudden think that the AI is magical, right? Start using them and not understand the limitations. So you need to really explain to people what's the best way to use, train people not only how to use it, but also understand the constraints, right, and the limitations, in what are the things that is really good at doing, and what are the things that are limitations, right? Deeply analyze your process, right? So really think about how your process can change, right? You are doing a task right now. Is there a role for AI in that? What's the role of AI? Is it about replacing some humans in a particular part of the task? Or is it the role about supporting human workers in a part of the task, right? You have to go deeper in your process and kind of figure out, hey, if this process step one, A, B, C, D, E, right? Oh, AI has a really good role in supporting the human in step A, has an interesting role about, perhaps replacing humans in step B. On step C, right now it's supporting again, right? So that's really, without understanding your processes, it's really hard to figure out what the role of AI could be. And finally, implement agile processes. This is something that has to be done because those things are evolving so quickly, right? If you have traditional approaches to dealing that, it's become very ineffective. Agile approaches is, things like Scrum or other variations of that, where you can iterate very quickly with the AI solutions. When you have the right metrics, right? You understand if you fail, you get better, you iterate, you get a new version, and so on and so forth. That's something that internally you have to do in terms of skills, processes, and your internal organization. You need to change your data management and data governance, right? If you want to be successful, have really top-notch data governance projects so that decision-making structures can be in place to support those AI projects, right? So people can make the right decisions about data principles, AI principles, and so on and so forth that can actually support those AI solutions. Analyze your AI, your data repositories in general and their application for AI projects, right? I mean, there's tons of data in many organizations, right? Does not really mean that they are suitable to AI initiatives. So you have to be aware of that, especially when this data coming from like IoT or Internet of Things sources, right? How to organize the data, how to transpose the data, how to translate the data, how to transform the data in a way that can be useful, right, as sources of interesting insights, right? And really invest in a data infrastructure that can actually be used to support your both AI and non-AI solutions when it comes to data. Then we need to change, right, your AI governance and risk management, right? Really thinking about what is our AI governance. Should we have an AI governance? My answer is yes, you should, right? And put together the right decision makers so that they can be assessing AI solutions, right? That they can really have perhaps, what's our principles? What are ethical principles in using AI, right? So have people in the right place to make those decisions. Create responsible AI practices. Organizations, and solution providers are becoming very good in providing some frameworks, right? But they have to be aligned with organizational principles. Right? So there are many more tool sets, many more responsible AI tool sets that allows you to can validate some of your assumptions, verify, right, the outcomes in terms of biases, right? So making sure that responsible AI frameworks that are adequate for your organization can be applicable when you are developing AI solutions. And finally, this is something that can be applicable to any solution, any technical solution, but really try to bring AI risk management staff early in the process of developing AI solutions. So instead of being them like an afterthought, right? Say, hey, we developed this, now go people and evaluate the risk, right? Try to come with the risk assessment as early as possible so that you have, risk and control, right? Practices embedded, right, as in every step of the solution development, so that you are not caught unaware of something because, later on someone discovers something, right? We want to bring people earlier. Okay, so those are my recommendations, right? As someone has been teaching AI in business for many years, right? Before all this hype about ChatGPT, right? This is what I have seen organizations doing. Some of them doing well. This is what I've seen organizations fail, right? And those essentially are things that if you are going to be implementing AI initiatives and you want them to be successful, this is my checklist of things that you can do to really improve the likelihood of success. And just to wrap, give time for any questions potentially. So this is a QR code for our MS in IT management at the Kelley School. The Kelley School is a leader in online education. Our Kelley Direct MBA program has been ranked #1 for many, many years. Our MS programs at the Kelley School have been ranked #1 for many years. In the past, we are kind of reimagine them right now to keep that streak going. So if you are interested in MSIT management, that's where we cover a lot of those things that we cover today: leadership, we cover AI for business, we actually cover deep learning and generative AI in more detail, we cover machine learning, right? We cover the enterprise data. This is the program if you want to be around there. And we are able, and we also have an MS in business analytics and MS in finance as well, if you're interested. I think I have a question. What are the language requirements? I'm talking about language idiom, so English. If you're talking about computing language, none. We'll teach everything. So I'm not sure if I answered that correctly or not, but feel free to do that. Oh, that is a great question, right? So career opportunities, a lot of consulting, right? So you would be amazed to see. So first of all, AI consulting is probably one of the hottest topics right now. Just people that can actually be in consulting engagements, right? Or even internal consultants. And because again, everybody's trying to learn this, right? And many people are not prepared, right? They are working all the wrong assumptions, right? So consulting is a big area right now, and just understanding how AI can impact business. So LinkedIn actually published some months ago one of the main, like what's the hottest areas, and anything of course related to AI is very hot, right? But in particular, I do think that things that really tie together the AI technology with business, that's where the biggest gaps are. That's when people do not really have enough people to say, hey, this is what is possible for you to do. This is what we can do. This is our organization structure. Let's put them all together to make sure that they're able to have a successful AI journey here. That's a huge lack of people who can do that in organizations right now. Not sure if we have additional. Thanks for the questions, by the way. I appreciate that as always. Any additional questions?
Well, yeah, if we don't have any more questions, what we can also do is just pop an email in the communication after the webinar if anyone has any follow-up questions. And as well, all of the useful links that Alex mentioned today. So yeah, if no further questions from students, I'm not sure if anyone has any final words or anything more to share on this call.
Arlene, would you like to take a
I'd
shot
just
at
like
that?
to say, thank you again for joining us today and for your interest in this topic. And as Alex said, we do have, MS in IT management. We also have an MS in business analytics and an MS in finance. These programs are completely online and highly asynchronous, very compatible with, being on an entirely different time zone than the US, and would never require coming to our campus. We look forward to answering any questions that you may have about those if they come up, if you have a chance to check out our website. And thank you again for joining us.
And for me, just the fact that you are here or watching the recording, wherever you are, means that you have the right mindset, right? And the right mindset to really learn, right? You are in a constant learning journey. That is, I'm old enough, but I still keep learning every day, right? Because that's an exciting area. That's something that we need to keep updating ourselves. And the fact that you are here or watching this recording, right, means that you really are on the right mindset, the right perspective to really increase your professional prospects, right, and really be involved in an area that's extremely exciting. There are so many opportunities, and you really want to be on that position that you can capitalize on your own smarts and the education, right, opportunities that are available to you to really, really be successful in the future. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for watching this.
Well, thank you so much, Alex and Arlen, for that wonderful presentation, and all the students as well for joining us today, and those that will be watching the recording as well. So yeah, thank you very much wherever you guys are in the world. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.